The previous videos, we mentioned about two typical assessments for the postgraduate studies, which are thesis proposal and proposal defense, as well as the thesis and viva. We mentioned about the thesis proposal, where you need to demonstrate that you have done proper planning for your research study, which is later presented to a group of examiners in the presentations of about 20 minutes plus the Q&A section. Now we're going to proceed with the thesis or dissertations as well as the viva examinations. Let us first look at the thesis. It is a typewritten manuscript in which students address a particular problem in his chosen field. It reports the outcome of a supervised individual research project as a part of graduate degree, which consists of logical, structure, and defensible reasoning based on credible and verifiable evidence. It shows that you understand a particular concept or procedures through lab report, thesis, or essays. And it should be written in the format or guideline given by the university. Basically, whatever that you have done during your 2 to 3 years of postgraduate study, undertaking the master's or PhD, will need to be reported in the thesis. The emphasis of the thesis, it will be the research design, fundamental knowledge, principles, theories as acquired from the literature, how the research was carried out, what are the investigation program, what are the data, how do you analyze the results, how do you interpret the results, what are the findings and conclusions. It is very knowledge based, which require higher thinking orders as well as synthesis of the existing knowledge as well as the new findings in order to answer the research questions or to resolve a problem which you have identified to be resolved for the research. This research project must be done by you. You will need to carry out the investigations and go through most of the significant part of the research. You cannot ask somebody else to do the research on your behalf. That means whichever findings or conclusions that you have acquired from the research, it should be the products of your works. The entire thesis needs to be written in the rigorous manner. Proper usage of the terminology, every single words and statements are carefully written, logical, structured, and whatever that you have obtained from your investigations should be supported with good evidence. And remember that you will need to comply with the guideline given by the university in terms of the formats, length of the thesis, and etc. These are the recommended length for the thesis of master and PhD degree, which is excluding the title, content, table, figures, reference, and appendix. Some university might define by the numbers of pages, normally somewhere between 200 to 300 pages. These are the typical layout of the thesis. Most commonly, it will be introductions, literature review, methodology, result and finding, discussions, conclusion, summary, and recommendations for future research. It is dependent on the amount of content as well as the research design. Slight adjustment may be made within the chapters. Basically, the first 3 chapters are typicals, which include the introductions, literature review, methodology. Some others might expand the result and analysis as well as the discussions into several chapters, probably by the stages of studies or the focus of the topic or in line with your objectives and etc. And then the final chapter, it will be quite typical, which is the conclusions, summaries, recommendations for future research. It depends how you're going to structure your thesis. The result may sometimes be combined with discussions as a single subheadings, or there could be more chapters to be added for the result and discussions. Next, let us look at the viva examinations. The viva presentations is normally conducted after the examiners has marked the thesis. These are the typical panels of the examiner. There will be a chairman, there will be external examiner, there will be internal examiner, as well as the secretariat, which is School of Postgraduate Studies. The external examiner means that the examiners are coming from the other university, and the internal examiner, it will be from your own university. This panel of examiner does not include your supervisors, and they should not be involved with the supervisions of your thesis. These are the typical informations regarding the panels of examiner, as well as the durations for the viva for your master's and PhD degree. For PhD degree, the examiner should be either the professors or the associate professors. The presentations will take about 30 minutes plus the Q&A section. As for the masters, the examiner can be associate professor as well as the staff with PhDs. The duration is estimated by 20 minutes plus Q&A section. The examiner should look into every single part of your thesis, sentence by sentence, word by word, and every examiner will get to comment as well as asking questions regarding your research, and you will need to provide answers for those questions. The entire process of this viva will typically take times about 2 to 3 hours, depending how much things need to be discussed, whether there are major things or not, as observed on your thesis. For you to attend this viva, you need to get yourself well prepared. Every single aspect you need to know. That's why it is important for you to be actively involved in the entire investigation program. There could be some part require assistance. You are still expected to know every single one of them, as this may be asked. The purpose here is to verify that you are actually doing the investigations. You are not taking the words of somebody else, claiming that is your work. And then the second thing here, it is to evaluate your understanding on the topic that you are investigating, as well as to confirm that you really know how the research is being carried out. These are the possible outcomes for the viva examinations, which include pass, pass with minor corrections, pass with major corrections, resubmissions of thesis or re-examinations, fail. All these outcomes are applicable for both Masters and PhD viva examinations. The best outcome for the viva examinations, it will be passing without any corrections required. In that case, after the viva presentations, you may directly submit your thesis. That means there are no noticeable error, no amendments are required by the examiners. Nevertheless, this is quite rare. Unless you are exceptionally good, normally you will receive some comment from the examiners which require you to do some amendment. The second to the best, it will be pass with minor correction. That means you will need to do some amendment or corrections, or you will need to add informations or data without adding the experimental work, or there are minor text editing or reformatting, or you will need to add explanations without affecting the conclusions. As for the corrections, you will be given 2 months for the corrections, which needs to be checked by the internal examiner and the main supervisors. In the case that it is not satisfied, there could be second corrections until both the internal examiners and the main supervisor are satisfied. The entire process of the corrections, if it involves more than one-time corrections, it should not exceed 1 year. The next conditions, it will be passed with major corrections. That means there will be amendment and corrections required. We can involve in-depth explanations on large body of sections without affecting the conclusions. That means the entire directions is correct, which is acceptable by the examiner, only that there will be a significant improvement required leading to the main conclusions which has been presented to the examiners. There will be major revisions or improvement on the data analysis or descriptions of the methodology or discussions of the results. And there will be major editings of text or formatting. Normally 6 months are given for the corrections to be checked by the external or internal examiner or both the externals and internal examiners. The entire process of corrections cannot be more than 1 year. Next one, it will be the resubmissions of thesis for re-examinations. Typically, it means that the quality of your thesis is not acceptable. The examiners do not agree that you acquire your postgraduate study degree based on what you have submitted. Significant improvement will be required, probably in terms of the scopes, or the coverage is insufficient and not to the standard of your postgraduate degree. This might involve additional experimental works and data analysis. Most likely there will be major revisions due to the areas of methodology, which may result in redesign of your methodology, or you might need to repeat your investigation program, and there could be in-depth explanations that will affect your overall conclusions, or the examiner perceives that you fail to attain sufficient academic standard in novelty and significant contributions. For the corrections, you will need to resubmit everything within 1 year. If you exceed the time, your candidature will be terminated. You will need to repeat the viva, and the numbers of repetitions for the viva presentations, it will be maximum 2 times. By all means, you should avoid this. That means you are not meeting the standards. You have to redo everything. Most likely the significant part of it will require redo. It is not merely amendment on the text. It may also involve the reconstructions of your investigations program. The last conditions, it would be fail. That means you found guilty of plagiarism, exceeding limits as approved by the university, or the quality of the thesis are below the standards, that have substantial weakness which cannot be addressed even with additional experiment work. That means the mistakes is too significant that cannot be rectified, or is not possible to be rectified within 1 year. This will be the worst case scenario as the outcome for the viva examinations. You might not see this quite often, because for those who cannot do the postgraduate study, most likely they're going to be withdrawn somewhere between their postgraduate studies. They should have already given up before reaching to the submission at this stage. We see more students being dropped out or withdrawn from the postgraduate studies halfway as compared those failed their viva presentations. However, it is still possible. It is especially when you don't do your project properly, or you are in fact taking credits out of others people's work, or your research is extremely bad that nearly cannot be rectified. This shows the importance of doing your research carefully and properly. For those who are doing these viva examinations, there is another possible outcome, which the examiner feels that the students are not qualified for the PhD degree, not meeting the standards of the PhD, but the work done is about equivalent to masters. Therefore, they would recommend award of master's degree. This happens when students do not achieve the requirement in novelty and significant contributions of PhD, only achieve the quality of masters, and the witness can be corrected and sufficient to be awarded of a master's degree. In this case, the students who are actually taking the PhD, not meeting the requirement of PhD, barely meet the requirement of masters, the examiner recommends to downgrade the award to master degree. Just now we mentioned about the plagiarism. Normally there are limits as defined by the universities. This is an example that the limits as defined by the School of Postgraduate Study. For example, overall similarity index less than 20%, matching text in the continuous block of less than 8 words, and less than 5% similarity for each individual sources. Of course, these requirements are subjected to different universities. How do you extract those data when you run through the plagiarism check from the Turnitin? Let us look at this example here. This is a typical report that you can obtain from the Turnitin. It indicates to you the percentage of the similarity index, which in this case, it is only 5%, which is less than 20%. And then the second criteria, the similarity by the sources, which exclude the quotes, bibliography, and text match less than 8 words. It will be considered as plagiarism when you have text match more than 8 words. And then you will be able to observe the list here. Where are the matching with the previous publications? And there are percentage indicated here. They are observing the numbers of publications having this percentage more than 5%. You will need to fulfill all those 3 criteria in order to be considered without plagiarisms. In fact, if you are not copying from any other resources, you don't have to worry about the percentage. It will normally ranging somewhere between 4 to 7%. But if you realize that you have a habit unable to digest informations, that you often refer to somebody else, took the entire statement, put into your thesis, then you will expect the percentage of the similarity will be rather high. Plagiarism is one thing. You know that you are taking the sentence from the other publications without proper digestions, without using your own words. Most likely you're going to receive a lot of comments from the examiner. It is easily detectable as observed from your writing style, and the information seems to be here and there, not smoothly delivered. You should worry more about this instead of the plagiarism. In fact, if you do your thesis properly, what you observe, you document it. What is your opinion? You state it. You use your own word throughout the thesis. You don't have to worry about the Turnitin report. The requirement here is not that strict. In fact, you will definitely pass this.